and welcome to this episode of The Brief. I'm your host, Meredith Reed. I'm here today with Vernon Jones. He's the head of safety for MovieStarPlanet, a social network and game for kids. Prior to working in trust and safety in gaming, Vernon was a social worker. He worked in the Statutory Social Services Department in the UK and Denmark, as well as at Save the Children as a lobbyist for children's rights. Welcome, Vernon.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
We're so glad to have you. So Could you just start by telling me about MovieStarPlanet? What is it?
Well, MovieStarPlanet is probably the first social networking site that children will learn about and be actively involved in. It's a game for children between the ages of 8 to 15. And it allows children to create content, to create friendships, and as I said earlier, it allows them to involve themselves in a safe social networking experience for probably the very first time. And this is important because as we all know, children enjoy gaming, and they also enjoy networking with their friends, being able to contact their friends away from school and in an online environment. And we feel that we offer both aspects of an online experience that children can enjoy safely. Making content and making new friends online.
Obviously, that safety aspect that you touched on is so important for kids who are using any sort of online social network. So you came to your current position as head of safety at MovieStarPlanet from a background in children's rights and social work. So can you tell me about the work that you did there? What started your journey into working in children's rights and safety?
Well, I'm educated and registered as a social worker in the UK and in Denmark. So I'd worked in Statutory Social Services departments, working with children and families, mostly in child protection, and that involves making sure that children are safe, and making sure that you're, as an advocate for children, you're making sure that they reach their full potential. And sometimes that can be difficult for children that are in an environment where maybe their social needs are not being met and their educational needs are not being met. So I, from working in a statutory child protection environment, working with children that unfortunately being subjected to abuse and exploitation, I then moved into working for an NGO. I worked for Save the Children for 10 years, and that involved lobbying on some of the issues that I'd been involved in as a statutory social worker. It meant lobbying governments, lobbying organisations, European organisations like the European Union, the European Commission, and putting children's rights and child protection, child safeguarding on the political map. And that involved a lot around online child safeguarding. I think what we noticed in Save the Children back in 1999 was that the internet was going to play an invaluable role in children's lives. And that was both positive, and we looked at some of the negative aspects that could be part of children engaging with an online environment. So we at Save the Children at that point, we looked at what the issues could be, what the negative issues, and unfortunately what we saw in 1999 was child abuse images, that people producing child abuse images and child sexual abuse material could be a massive issue. And unfortunately we've seen as years have gone on that has evolved into an issue. So we brought that onto the map, onto the political map. We also looked at identifying the children who were involved in, who were exploited to produce those images. So we worked with with police organisations, law enforcement organisations, and other NGOs to look at how children could be located and could be safeguarded in terms of those terrible issues that we see, unfortunately, as a big issue today. And then we also moved on to look at what we could do to look at the evolving aspect of children getting involved in social networking sites. So making sure that children were safeguarded in the gaming industry, in the social networking sites that began to start up in the early 2000s, and we work with industry. So I was working as an NGO with industry to look at how we can safeguard children, and that really paved the path to enter into the industry, the post that I'm in now. So I was asked by MovieStarPlanet back in 2012 to look at the issues and come and take up this post that I have now. So I brought the experience. If some could say I turned gamekeeper to poacher or poacher to gamekeeper, that being able to use the lobbying experience with industry that I'd used to persuade them or encourage industry to bring in safeguarding measures, to being the person then that was responsible for implementing those child safeguarding measures in an actual social networking gaming environment. So that's the short history of how I became involved in safeguarding children within a child safeguarding environment within industry.
Well, thank you for giving us some background on that. And that is something that we find uniquely in the trust and safety industry, that people come from many different backgrounds, and social work and nonprofit work is one of those backgrounds that we tend to see, and it actually applies beautifully to the work that many companies need for their trust and safety department. So could you tell us, what is the current state of child safety in the video game industry? What do you see as the biggest areas in need of change or improvement with online games designed for kids?
Well, we have to start at the very beginning in this, I think, and we have to start at the production, in the production areas of where we're producing games, and one of the issues that we're looking at Save the Children, and a lot of industry people are looking at, is a thing called safety by design. It's about trust and safety, working together with the production teams, with the technicians, with the people that produce the online content from the very beginning. And I think this is where we need to start. We need to embed a culture of child safeguarding at the very beginning of the process of designing games. And that sounds easy, and that sounds something that, yeah, should be done. But if you look at a lot of games, they're produced by small teams, and maybe they don't have a child safeguarding, a trust and safety team. So they're focused on producing the game, getting the game out as soon as possible, and getting a game out that's quality, that involves engaging with children. But sometimes we may forget about the trust and safety issues, because in the past, and I'm not saying now, but in the past, that's been seen as something as a luxury and an add-on. So we need to begin at the very beginning of the process. We need to make sure that when we're producing games, especially for children, that we involve the production staff, the content staff, the back-enders, the front-enders, all the people that are involved in that process of producing a quality game for children. They need to be engaged. They need to know what they're doing will have a consequence for children in the future, and that may be difficult for children that for people that have come from a technical background, that have not come from a trust and safety background. So that we have a job to do in terms of working together with the production staff, with the production team, to bring safety and trust measures at the very beginning of the game producing process. And as I said, that sounds something easy, but it is not. I mean, my own experience says that that involves a lot of hard work. That involves a lot of skills, social skills, management skills, being able to bring everybody together. And in some small companies, that can be a very challenging task. So what we're trying to do is to bring those safety measures that we bring at the very beginning will have a long-lasting effect upon how the game is seen and used by children and parents. If we get things right at the very beginning, then we'll not have to change things in terms of implementing safeguarding measures later in the game, because that can be difficult once a game is already produced and all systems are in place. Then if you've not got your moderation, if you've not got your child safeguarding measures there, that can be difficult to change at a later stage, and it can also be very expensive if you've not thought about it from the very beginning. So what we're talking about here is making games that can be adequately moderated, that can have safeguarding measures that protect children, but also make the gaming experience as positive as possible. So it's about teamwork. It's about different people from different backgrounds working together to produce a quality game that is safe. And as we've seen the consequences if you don't get that right can be quite drastic for children and the actual company that produces the game. We've seen gaming companies have massive issues with negative media exposure because they've not taken the steps to produce the safeguarding measures that should be there in terms of protecting children from bullying, from cheating, from online grooming. And these are all issues that gaming companies who produce games for children have to be aware of and have to deal with. It's a difficult subject to talk about, but if we're not open and honest and transparent, then this issue can come back to harm a company that has not thought about trust and safety.
So could you elaborate a little bit more about how this could come back to harm a company that hasn't thought about trust and safety? What would you say to those companies that don't engage in safety by design, don't make trust and safety a priority? Obviously, there is an expense involved with prioritizing trust and safety. How do you approach the challenge of justifying the cost of trust and safety features, and how do you show the impact on your business?
Well, this is always a difficult issue for trust and safety managers. We're always seen as the bad guys. I remember one day the production team started playing the Darth Vader music when I walked down because that's how they saw me, as the guy that always told them no. That was quite funny actually. But I saw where they were coming from. It's like, oh, he's here again to tell us what we can't do, and but that's what we are. We as trust and safety, but we shouldn't be frightened to ask those awkward questions in terms of child safeguarding, because if the consequences for a company are that you face massive financial costs, you face child protection costs. Everybody has families, everybody has children. We don't want to see children harmed in any way or form in relation to a gaming context. And if we don't have that, if we don't have the safeguarding measures in place, children can be harmed, children can be bullied, children can lose their accounts through cheating, children can be groomed online in terms of sexual exploitation. These are massively important issues, and if we don't get that right, there are economic consequences and there are social consequences for a company, how it's seen by the public, how it's seen by parents, how it's seen by government and law enforcement agencies. if you as a company do not have the correct child safeguarding measures in place, your company is going to fail. And what we're going to see in the future, and what we're seeing now, is that legislation is coming in. We've got legislation in terms of privacy and the copper legislation in the United States, and what we're going to be seeing is we're going to be seeing child safeguarding legislation coming in over the summer in the children. The online harms white paper is going to be coming into effect in the United Kingdom, and legislation is going to be following in Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the EU. The European Union is also working on legislation in terms of safeguarding children online. So these are not. There is a cost of implementing child safeguarding measures and moderation, but the consequences economically and in terms of a company standing, they're going to be more severe if these initial costs are not made in terms of implementing child safeguarding and moderation measures. A gaming company will not survive in the future in terms of online child safeguarding.
So how important do you think the role of the government and the role of the law is in safeguarding children with gaming and social platforms online? Obviously, it's kind of crazy for how long the internet has been around that we're just kind of coming around to some of setting up some of these legal structures for regulating platforms. But of course, it's so important. So could you talk a little bit more about that, and then also some of the challenges you could run into with getting a government involved in protecting children online? Where is the connection between the government and the platform, and also on an international level, whose government is in charge of these things?
Oh, that's a really difficult one. I think in the past, gaming companies have tried to avoid working with governments in terms of implementing legislation, and self-regulation has been the order of the day in terms of how companies wanted to move forward in terms of child safeguarding and privacy and other issues. But there comes a time when the internet is not different from other aspects of life, in that we have to take measures that protect children and put children's privacy at the forefront of what we do. Now, the big one for me is working with law enforcement agencies. Working with children online means that there are going to be incidents, there are going to be cases that need to be worked with together with government agencies and law enforcement agencies. So we need a legislative framework that allows us to protect children's privacy, but also pass information to law enforcement agencies when illegal activity takes place on our sites. That's no more apparent than when we protect children from grooming and sexual exploitation. There has to be methods, and there has to be legislation in place that allows us to pass on information that will result in children being protected and potential perpetrators being arrested. So that is an important aspect of government agencies, law enforcement agencies being able to work together. Governments need to allow us to protect children's privacy, but we also need to be able to give law enforcement agencies the information that will protect children, and that will allow them to work with social services departments to identify children that maybe have been groomed online, and allow them to identify and protect children. So I think that's one area, and there's a dichotomy in terms of how do we protect children's privacy, how do we pass on information that law enforcement agencies require. So that for me is the biggest area. I think that we're working together with other industry colleagues and with law enforcement agencies around the world to work on that issue, to make sure that we do what we can to make the legislation that is in place work, and to protect children's privacy and to safeguard children.
Absolutely. And Vernon, thank you so much for coming on today and telling us more about keeping children safe online, and more about the gaming industry as it applies to kids. We really loved having you on. So thank you for being here.
No worries. It was fun. Great to talk to you.
And we'll see you next time on The Brief.
Yes, thank you.